Over the past couple of months, I've seen that there is a raging debate on Indus Valley Civilization, and both Pakistanis and Indians on Twitter have been debating this issue.
In the thinking people and in the intelligentsia and in the elements of the state, we are reclaiming our Indus identity.
It also discusses Mahabharata, it also discusses Ramayana and
That's
the characters in Ramayana, and then it later comes on to, of course, Muhammad bin Qasim.
We have to defend not just the physical but the ideological frontiers. What are those ideological frontiers? So this whole idea of a non-Muslim past, of an ancient past, was being dismissed by the state.
A lot of people have started saying that Pakistan should rename itself to Indus Republic.
We can look towards them, we can acknowledge that, but we can't. But we are not Uzbeks, we are not
Of course
Tajiks, we are Desi people of this region.
Yeah.
And let's acknowledge that, and so in a way, religion would then be one marker of identity.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of New Wave History. Today I have Raza Rumi with me, who is not just a historian, he's a writer, he's also the editor of New Wave History as well as Nayador Media. Raza, thank you for joining us. Over the past couple of months, I've seen that there is a raging debate on Indus Valley Civilization, and both Pakistanis and Indians on Twitter have been debating this issue, quite angrily at times. And some of them have been, for example, the Ministry of Culture in India did some tweets as well about its history, and they have been making some AI images of certain artifacts that have been found from Indus Valley Civilization over the many decades since 1920s, and they have been claiming that those are from Vedic era or some they have something to do with their gods and their mythology. Meanwhile, Pakistanis have been claiming that this is our geography, we are here, we've been living here, this is our DNA, etc. Indians claim that this is you must have seen some of the articles that have been written, and they think that it is a state-led campaign by the Pakistanis, and
Yes.
because it has something to do with Indus Waters Treaty, because India has been illegally, I must say, violating it over the last few months. So what would you say? Do you think it's a state-led campaign, or you think that this is something that Pakistanis have certainly come into, come to realize that this is our history, etc.? What would you?
So I think no, thank you, Ali. And I'm a student of history. I'm not a historian. So,
But you have written.
but
extensively
yeah, but I
about
mean,
it, yeah.
people might, the real historians will get upset. So the thing is, thank you for. I think it was an important discussion when we talked about it as well. There are two things happening. One, of course, is the fact that Pakistanis, especially Pakistani elites, the intelligentsia, they are kind of reclaiming their past, their non-Muslim past, which for decades they have been arguing. They have been saying that, let's not ignore that, let's not undermine that, let's not ignore that. But the state had another direction. State wanted to create an Islamic nationalist state, and so was focusing more on the Muslim past of Pakistanis and South Asians, and also linking themselves with the Central Asians, linking themselves with Arabs, and becoming a kind of a torchbearer of Ummah. But I think the recent events, in particular, this conflict with India last year, and India's, announcement of revoking or suspending the Indus Waters Treaty, has caused both a revisiting of this position, but also it is an assertion, to the world and to India, and perhaps to ourselves as well, that we are inheritors of the Indus Valley Civilization, and the Indus River is what keeps Pakistan together. It keeps it fertile, it keeps people alive, it is the major source of life in this region. So I think it's become an existential issue. But I think there's another aspect to it, which is also very gradually we are seeing, and I hope I am right, I could be wrong, that since past few years, Pakistan's establishment, the ruling class, has also been trying to figure out a way, because you see, the earlier projects, the fraternity with the Taliban, fraternity with other jihadists, with international facets of Islamism has failed and has flopped. So they're again coming back and finding something local, territorial to reshape Pakistan's identity. And I know I'm taking a long time because, Faisal Devji's new book, Faisal Devji, who's a historian of South Asia at Oxford University, his new book claims and argues that political Islam is over. The political Islam that we knew and we talked about and the world talked about, he basically is arguing that it's over, its shelf life is gone, and therefore now, and Pakistan is part of that whole project. Pakistan was a proponent of political Islam, Pakistan was a victim of political Islam, Pakistan was a better of that in the region as well. So that era is over, and that era is over. So I guess there's a sense of reclaiming and reviving that particular identity, and it's not a new thing because it's already there now. Etazaz Hassan's book, which you also wrote about recently, Etazaz Hassan wrote this book years ago. I mean, he wrote it while he was in jail. Actually, he started
in 1990s.
Yeah.
I guess.
But before that, he had been jailed. He started writing and thinking about it, following Nehru's footsteps. So anyway, but he argued that book, but he was not the first one. I remember there was a very, well-read and a great man of letters, Dr. Aftab Ahmed, a scholar of Ghalib, also a civil servant. So he wrote a review of Etazaz Hassan's book when it came out in early 90s, I think. And he said, this is not the first time this has been argued, and he cited about 5 to 10 books in Urdu, in English, pamphlets, which had argued the same idea that Pakistan, the region that is now Pakistan along the Indus on the east and the west, is actually has had always a distinct identity than rest of India, than the Gangetic plain, Indo-Gangetic plain. So I guess that idea is now coming back. Of course, ordinary Pakistanis, average Pakistanis on the road, if you ask them, they don't really care, right? They don't care about, and I mean, if you ask them about Akbar Badshah or Babur, they know vaguely about it, But I guess in the thinking people and in the intelligentsia and in the elements of the state, we are reclaiming our Indus identity.
You say that we are reclaiming it, but I mean, we've seen the...
It was always there. You're saying that.
Well, it was, but that's not what I'm arguing about right now. What I'm saying is that, for example, Field Marshal, when there is a much touted statement by him from last year when he said that Hindus and Muslims are two different nations, and we came into being on the basis of two-nation theory, etc.
Yes.
And at the same time, we haven't seen any statements coming out of the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister, who's otherwise very Twitter friendly. He's Twitter happy.
Twitter happy.
Yeah, so he's Twitter happy, and he has made some statements about the Ummah, and I think this is more about what my observation is, that it started as something someone tweeted, and they saw the Sanghis and BJP people suddenly get irked about, and they just started rage baiting them, and it has organically become a part of the debate through social media.
So I think, the issue here is that, first of all, Pakistan's army chief, now Field Marshal, when he made that statement, now you see that's a periodic statement all army chiefs make. He's not the first one, he's not the last one. Partly because the forces that he's leading are trained to fight India. Day in and night, their exercises. I mean, I was once even trained when I was when I was being trained as a civil servant. I spent a few, 2 months with the regiment, and the kind of anti-India, thing you heard was because that's how you motivate the Jawans and the officers, because they need an enemy, and likewise in India they need an enemy.
Don't have to be intellectuals, obviously.
Yeah. But so you have to motivate those people. So that's his basic constituency. He has to address them. But even one of our former Chief Justices, I think it was Justice Saqib Nisar, even he talked about two-nation theory, he talked about Hindus. He said, oh my God, I can't even name that those people who we left behind.
The British and the ones that cannot be named.
Yeah, the ones that cannot be named. This is a periodic problem that Pakistan's leaders have. But I think since then, Field Marshal has also, since he has become this international diplomat and peacemaker, you have seen that even his persona, his statements, his public appearances have also changed. So ultimately, he is a pragmatist like his earlier predecessors. His predecessor, General Bajwa, actually was talking about geoeconomics and wanted to open trade with India. I know it for sure. And previously, General Musharraf even tried very hard to find a solution on Kashmir and came close to the 4-point formula. Musharraf's own aides and subordinates, they launched a conspiracy and ousted him from the country.
Yes.
Right? We know that now. And then later he was ousted as the president. Then he had to leave the country. He died in exile as well. So I guess that, the army is a pragmatic institution. And I think they also read the international situation. They also read that their espousal of jihadism, because you see, that was Cold War legacy. There was a Cold War requirement that's over. In fact, jihadism as a project is over. It's stale. It holds no attraction because the practitioners of jihad have not achieved anything other than the destruction of their communities. And look at Pakistan. You know how we are now fighting with the Taliban, with the Pakistani Taliban, and they are aiding Baloch insurgents and they are causing havoc. Pakistan state has learnt a lesson. I hope it stays and they don't revert, because you never know with them. But at least from their statements, it seems that they've even given up the distinction of good jihadis and bad jihadis. The good jihadis are the ones who are exporting jihad, and the bad jihadis who want to bring Sharia into Pakistan. So now they are saying it's the same thing, and they're violent groups. So Indus Valley Civilization and Pakistan's position in this region, therefore, is something that is being very slowly coming into public limelight. And a lot of articles, lots of social media posts and discussions have focused on that. And you're right. I mean, you were talking, Ali, you were saying that on Pakistan's 10 rupee note, 20 rupee note always had Mohenjo-daro there, right? Yeah. Which is a fact. We read it in school books, but we did not read as much, let's say, the generation before me read. Because I was a school kid in 1980s when General Zia was revising the curricula. So they were, reducing the size of non-Muslim heritage and expanding on Mughals and Central Asians and Ummah, etc., etc. But I think now we are seeing that this will also change, because and this should change. I mean, I argue, and I personally feel that it is Indus Valley. Yes, we are living there next to Indus, but it solely does not belong to us, because it also belongs to the Indians. And let's not give up that. But the problem in India, why? So I think the incident that you were citing, that the Indian Ministry of Culture tweeted something about the seal. The Indus Valley seal.
There are 3 or 4, and there's one Pashupati seal.
Pashupati, yeah.
So there are others. See,
and they said it is Hindu.
It is Hindu, it is Shiv.
It is Shiv, right? Now, historians have debunked that.
Yes.
There is no evidence. So there's a very a brilliant young historian, Ruchika Shah Sharma, whom I know. We've interviewed her for New Wave History also. Yes. So Ruchika even did a whole video on that when did the Vedic period start, and that's about 1500 BC or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? And so therefore, how can you ascribe something 8,000 or 9,000 years old or 6,000 years old? We exactly don't know when the seal was. Roughly between 5 to 7,000.
4,300 years.
About 5,000 BC. 5,000 years, more than 5,000, 7,000 years. So, which basically means that, how you can't ascribe that, because the identity of Hindu or Hindutva or Hinduism did not exist then. It was, and I'm not saying this, historians are saying this. I also looked into that. I even quote tweeted and I said that, it belongs to Pakistan also, this seal, because we live next to Mohenjo-daro. Hello.
And Harappa.
And Harappa. And our language, Punjabi language, in fact, there are scholars who say that ancient Punjabi was a direct descendant of Harappan. One of my uncles who spent his life researching languages, and he came up with, although one of the problems we face is we don't know the Indus script so far, but he came up with the idea that how the ancient Harappan language has turned into ancient Punjabi, and a lot of scholars say that ancient Punjabi, which then turned into modern Punjabi by Baba Farid and others, influenced other languages of South Asia. Because it's a very old language. So anyway, I used to joke with him. I used to call him that you're a Punjabi supremacist. But he had he said how the Harappans had sounds, etc. And a lot of them in India, I read many papers which also linked the Sanskrit and other local languages, not Sanskrit per se, but other languages to the legacy of the Harappan civilization. So both states claim that. But to call it a Hindu seal is religious supremacism. It's like saying that this seal is Islamic, which we also try and do, right? Sometimes our mullahs also say when human beings, everybody is born a Muslim. You've heard this, right?
Yes,
so the Hindutva lot says everybody is born a Hindu. And later on they change or whatever, they get converted. So it's a mirror.
Atheists say every child is born an atheist.
Atheist, right? Exactly. So it's a mirror image of extremist ideology. And that is so this idea of a ministry. You see, if a BJP minister or a leader would have tweeted as a political party, it's fine. RSS could have, understandable. That's their ideology. But when the ministry, which is the gatekeeper of, archaeology, cultural artifacts, the, view of history by the state, claims, and makes an error in that claim, then it's a matter of concern. And that's why there was a big reaction within India as well, although muted, and from Pakistan as well. So I guess it is the Hindu supremacist discourse that we are looking at in that. And that's a very interesting thing, because while we are trying to fight this extremist ideology and fix ourselves, the Indians have taken the path that Pakistan adopted some decades ago.
And some people have argued that this is the path to decolonization in South Asia. Probably you have to become Islamist or hyper-religious first before you decolonize yourself. So the thing I wanted to discuss and you have partially touched on it as well, that Pakistan's history with the Indus Valley Civilization. So I was talking to Yasir Latif Hamdani the other day for the Urdu channel, Naya Daur Urdu, and he said that there was a book that used to be published from 1958 from some publishers in Kakul, and it was a book that was published everywhere, and that was read everywhere in every school. It was a part of the curriculum. And he said that later those rights were transferred to Feroz Sons, and that book is still published there, and it does discuss Indus Valley Civilization. It starts from Indus Valley Civilization, Mohenjo-daro Harappa. I've read that book. It also discusses Mahabharata. It also discusses Ramayana and the characters in Ramayana, and then it later comes on to, of course, Muhammad bin Qasim and other people, Mahmud Ghaznavi, etc. So Pakistan, he says, that has always claimed this. For example, Chaudhry Rahmat Ali in his 1934 book has also discussed this. And then this 10 rupee note in 1976, Bhutto Sahab in fact invited Shah of Iran to Mohenjo-daro, and he took him there. So we haven't really apart from a brief period when Zia and Ziaism, the 80s and 90s, don't you think, because you might not be a historian, but you are a cultural critic, and you have written Being Pakistani and all, so you must educate our audiences. Some of them might be living in India as well. What has been our relationship over the years with the Indus Valley Civilization? I personally don't think that we have ever been antagonistic to the idea that we are descendants of Indus Valley Civilization.
No, I don't think so either. I agree with you by and large. I think, well, first of all, we have to understand that all of this excavation was done in the colonial period, right? So, like all issues faced by India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, this is also a colonial legacy. In a way, the excavation, the identification of objects, the discovery of a civilization, all happened under the aegis of the British Archaeology Department. In fact, in Lahore Fort, now they have discovered all these, they found files locked up, archives locked up in a room, and now they've cleared and dusted it. And I saw it last year. I visited them, and they've actually now turned that into a library which shows all these excavations and all these British archaeologists who were coming, the French were coming, and others were coming. But there's a book, very interesting book, which we used to look at, and I'm sure you've seen it, 5,000 Years of Pakistan by Wheeler.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but yes, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So that book was a basic text when we used to, when we were students, and we, in the civil service exam, in masters in different disciplines in Pakistan studies, that book is still, and it is basically about Indus Valley Civilization, then Gandhara and other ancient, and then Alexander the Great, etc., the Greeks coming into India and into this region, etc. So Wheeler's book primarily focuses on that, and that's a great narrative, and Pakistani state actually promoted that book, published and republished, and it's found everywhere. If you go to an old bookshop, you'll always find a copy. So that was state, and other than what Yasir mentioned, maybe Yasir is also talking about that book because there were different versions of that book which were brought out by the state. Now, until the 70s, late 70s, this was a given thing. Pakistan recognized Indus Valley Civilization as and claimed that it was an inheritor to the civilization and took pride in it. As you said, Bhutto took Shah of Iran.
And those pamphlets from PIA we've seen.
PIA, they used to promote, come to Mohenjo-daro and visit. And these were, those were the good days of Pakistan. We used to have foreign tourists.
Yes.
And Ayub Khan also did the same. Ayub Khan was also, with all his flaws, he was a modernist in his vision. But the problem starts with late 70s when Bhutto takes a U-turn on his secular ideology and turns into a soft Islamist, thinking it would help him politically. But a bigger Islamist takes over in the power in a coup. He is supported by the Saudis and the Americans, and basically asks him that you can rule Pakistan the way you want to, just do our dirty work in Afghanistan against the Soviets and train Mujahideen for us. Now, to train Mujahideen and to seek legitimacy at home, General Zia changes everything. Now, I know there are many apologists of Zia-ul-Haq who say, well, Bhutto was the original Islamist, or Jinnah did this, or Liaquat did. Yes, they all were using religious ideology for their political purposes. We cannot deny that, including the creation of Pakistan. Let's be realistic. But General Zia re-engineered everything. The curricula changes that occurred have been documented by Dr. A.H. Nayyar. They are available online, and I would urge our viewers to just Google A.H. Nayyar's report on how the curricula was changed, and it from 19. And I know it because I was a student and I saw it. I saw my textbook change. I was in class 6 when Arabic was introduced, and we was asked that next you have to start reading Arabic, and as a student you had no idea. For class 6, 7, 8 we studied Arabic, but then it was abandoned because it was a disaster. The kids were failing left, right, and center. Teachers, there were not enough Arabic teachers because the madrasas were still being created at that time, right? Yeah. Now you have enough manpower because it's mostly men, to actually start Arabic courses, because the 30,000-40,000 madrasas produce graduates every year. So that particular decade was when General Zia-ul-Haq not only changed the curricula but also tried to dwell upon this Islamist identity of Pakistan, in which he basically aligned Pakistan more and more with Sunni Islam and Wahhabism at the state level, and at the people's level, our labor working in Gulf, in rural areas, in peri-urban areas, migrants who had been leaving since the 70s, because the out-migration started in mid-70s under Bhutto, 73, 74, after the Islamic summit, Libya, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. Now, after a decade, those migrants started coming home, and they started bringing those ideas in the 80s, in the 90s. So therefore, now we see a lot of even the women's dress code. I mean, in Pakistan, there was always this observance of modesty, but in Bangladesh, for example, or East Bengal, very few women dressed in shalwar kameez or hijab, for that matter. They used to cover their head if at all, but they would wear a sari. Now you don't see as many women. If you look at pictures and images, footage coming, young people, maybe, and I've been to Bangladesh as well, and I noticed there was a mix, So all of this was happening in this region because of this linkage with Middle East as well. The money that was coming in. So money was coming in, ideas were coming in, ideologies were coming in, and this process continued because the Pakistani establishment was backing it out. So in those 20 years or so, from 1980s to 2000s, until Musharraf started doing some changes, so-called enlightened moderation, the damage had been done. One generation had grown with imbibing these ideas, and they are now ruling Pakistan, in the sense that these are the students who then later entered the civil service, became judges, turned into journalists, people in their 40s. Columnists, right? So you see that the state is being managed by these people who grew up imbibing Zia's curricula, that notion of Pakistan, ideology of Pakistan. This was also introduced during that time. Ideology of Pakistan did not, in the first few decades, there's no reference to it officially. Under Yahya Khan, General Sher Ali Patodi, Saif Ali Khan's uncle or distant uncle, actually brought the term ideology of Pakistan into official lexicon, and then later on again it was kind of went into the background, and then under Zia-ul-Haq, full-scale effort was made to introduce ideology of Pakistan. So the famous sentence by General Zia always was, and I remember as a child, as a school-going kid, that he used to say, the ideological frontiers of Pakistan. We have to defend not just the physical, but the ideological frontiers. What are those ideological frontiers? So this whole idea of a non-Muslim past, of an ancient past, was being dismissed by the state. But it was not abandoned. It was there in the textbooks, on the banknotes, on the posters, on the things you take pride. But it was not being highlighted, because you have to highlight jihad policy under the U.S. Cold War, objectives. Right? Yeah. Under General Musharraf, we saw some change started. General Musharraf wanted to change more, but he was also stopped by his other generals, who had also grown up in the Pakistan of that 1980s, 90s, same generation.
Yeah, of course.
Musharraf's juniors.
They were captains and majors.
And they read the same textbook. Before Zia-ul-Haq, in the army messes, alcohol was served for those who drank. There was a bar. So if you go to old any mess in Abbottabad or Murree or Karachi, you will find a bar, a very proper Gora Sahib bar, and of course they were devout Muslims who would not touch alcohol, and there would be other more, I would say, less devout Muslims who would drink, and but Zia-ul-Haq completely abolished that. So, and then he also allowed officers to grow beards. And then there was the indoctrination within the institution also started in that time period. It has grown and grown and grown to the extent that we know that one senior general who was a colleague of General Musharraf actually went and started fighting with Al Qaeda or Taliban, one of these groups, and died there allegedly.
And he was a relative of General Musharraf.
General Aziz.
General Shahid Aziz.
Shahid Aziz,
Shahid
right?
Aziz, yes.
And then countless other, the guy who was killed by the Taliban, by the good Colonel Imam.
Yeah.
All these, and then the Navy people who launched an attack in Karachi, who were in bed with Al Qaeda. So all of this is linked to that era. But then obviously states and systems take time to change. So I guess they are autocorrecting themselves, because that was the pendulum had gone too far, where you had ideological extreme and extremism seeping into the ranks of military and ranks of the Navy and ranks of the Air Force. So you had to stop that.
So, yeah, I'm going to talk about the pendulum, but you just mentioned Sher Ali Patodi and that whiskey was being served in the messes. So I read it, I think, in Witness to Surrender, but I can't really recall right now, where he says that General Sher Ali Patodi saw some generals or some army officers who came from Bengal, and they said that why don't you teach your troops some to offer prayers, and they should be more into Islam and everything, and he was drinking his whiskey while he was saying all this. So,
but that hypocrisy continues, because I have seen older men when I was a decade ago, when I used to live in Pakistan full time, and I saw whiskey drinking men, older men, praising the Taliban. They said, "Look, what a great strategic asset we have made. Look at how they are giving America a hard time." I have seen and heard it myself. I cannot name them. They are important, influential people, part of the elites. But I have seen this kind of rank hypocrisy. In fact, when the Taliban took over in 2021, August, right? We were here in this office, in this very office, and in the next few days, I happened to be invited to many parties, and people were celebrating.
Yeah.
Even places where alcohol was being widely consumed, they were saying, "Look at how the Taliban have, takat-e tumhari hai." Even Khaja Asif tweeted that, right, and all of that, and they were going
chains of slavery
by Imran Khan. But so there was this whole euphoria in the elites, and 5 years later, now they want to fight and bomb the Taliban to Stone Age. So
yes.
I think they have learned that lesson in a hard way, and I hope that they actually end up, because if they don't change the direction, that's why Indus Valley Civilization has to be adopted by Pakistan. That's why it's a very important idea of Pakistan, what is Raza Rumi and many others before him have said, that it is important for a tolerant, pluralistic Pakistan to look at its ancient past and claim it, own it, and celebrate it. Because if you just start with Muslim invasions of Muhammad bin Qasim or Ghaznavi, real and imagined, both ideas, Ghaznavi did not come here to spread Islam, or nor did Muhammad bin Qasim. They both came as these are political conquests for territory or whatever reasons,
Obviously.
and wealth. So we have to move past that and reclaim Indus Valley Civilization, Gandhara, and other different civilizations that exist in modern day Pakistan, and that is when we will actually change our direction.
And the world will probably be more receptive towards to what we are saying about ourselves and about us being victims of terrorism, etc.
Hopefully, yeah.
But before I move to the final question, which is about the Indian reaction to these assertions by Pakistani, I don't know, Twitterati mainly. I have a question about this idea I remember in 2013 I read a very long report by Alize Kohari in Herald. The title of the story was The Indus Republic. And she mentions that when the 18th Amendment was being discussed and debated in 2009 and 10,
Yeah.
there was a group of activists that suggested to the government that we should rename Pakistan to the Indus Republic because Pakistan is, as a term, has become too loaded, etc. I don't know and now I tweeted that part the other day. And since then, I've seen that a lot of people have started saying that Pakistan should rename itself to Indus Republic or the Islamic Republic of Indus. And I would have not taken note of it unless Dekho Suno Jano's, there's
Yeah.
a famous YouTube channel in Pakistan. And Faisal Tarad is the, Faisal Badaich, I think.
Faisal Badaich.
Faisal Badaich is the host of that show and owner of that show. And he also said on a podcast that I think we should change our name to Islamic Republic of Indus. I think that is going a bit too far.
It is going too far. I don't think there's a need to change the name. It's going to be virtually impossible. There'll be lots of opposition. But I think we don't have to change our name. All we have to do is change our curricula. Okay. Get rid of the ideological aspects and bring in facts. How did the Indus Valley plan itself in Mehergarh, in Mohenjo-daro, in Harappa, in other parts? What do these seals mean? What are the statues saying there? What is the Gandhara civilization saying there? And then, of course, also talk about the Muslim past. We had a rich, and we are very proud of that. We are proud of the sultans and the Mughals and their contribution to India and to Pakistan and the world. The administrative systems that the Indians have and Pakistanis have and Bangladeshis have the foundations were laid by the Mughals.
Yes.
The irrigation network, the canal system, which British later on expanded and everything, Mughals actually set up, and Sher Shah Suri built the Grand Trunk Road. The biggest communication.
The entire north of India.
Yeah.
Entire length of north of India.
Yeah, it was a disconnected region. They were, so we are very proud of that. So, but we should also be proud of what was there before, and in this region, because nation states need an anchor, right? So it goes back to the debate of nation state. What is a nation state? Now, a lot of debate has ensued that, and there's a consensus that sometimes nations are also imagined communities. So we imagine, right? We say, okay, we have a common past or something like that. Now, in Pakistan's case, we have struggled to create a nation state because from the very start there was this whole debate whether we belong to the local territories, the Punjab and Bengal and Sindh and NWFP, then now KP, or we belong to the larger Islamic Ummah or Islamic Eight, right? So there was always this debate. And how can we be different from Indians? That was the other obsession. Now the thing is, okay, one can understand that, if you have a separate country, you want to be different, because otherwise what's the point of having Pakistan if you want to be the same as India? I mean, it's understandable. But I guess we made wrong choices. If we had chosen at that time, think something like Indus Republic, or even identifying ourselves with that, with the river, with the whole territory, there's a beautiful book by Alice Albania, walking all over, it's
Empires of the Indus.
Empires of the Indus, right? So from the ancient times to the modern times, and how it informs the ecology, how it informs culture, politics, food choices, culinary habits, living, lived reality of Pakistanis. So it's a sad thing that a foreigner had to write that book. I wish some Pakistani would have done the job of modern in the modern times. So if we adopt that identity, even now, we can be a territorial nation state. We can say this is our territory. We have rich histories which we can be proud of, and we are inheritors of that, and we are also proud Muslims, and we have multiple identities like Indonesia, and we are happy and comfortable with that. We don't have to look towards Saudi Arabia, or we don't have to look towards Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, or I don't know which other, Bahrain or
Yeah, but there is.
Qatar.
I've read that there is some book by Hassan Dani, I think, who says
Ji,
that
Dr. Dani.
Dr. Dani, who says that, which says that Pakistanis have a lot in common with the Central
No,
Asians as
we
well.
do.
Yeah.
We do because we have always been on the. So you see, that's Pakistan's unique geography as well. That part of we are also linked to India, the Indian subcontinent. We're also connected to Central Asia because all these Central Asians, like Babur, for example, they used to come through
Came
this
from
region,
Fargana, yeah.
right? Chakwal, modern day
And there are
Chakwal.
still people who speak Wakhi in
Yes,
Gilgit
in
Baltistan
that
area. They are
corridor.
Tajiks. Yeah.
No. But what I'm trying to say is that we can look towards them. We can acknowledge that, but we can't. But we are not Uzbeks. We are not
No, of course
Tajiks.
we're not.
We are Desi people of this region.
Yeah.
And let's acknowledge that, and so in a way, religion would then be one marker of identity, not the only marker of identity. What we have done is that we have made religion the only marker of Pakistani identity, and that's a problematic issue, because then the non-Muslims, whatever 5%, 6% we have, then what do we do about them? And that's why there's a constant tension, because those non-Muslims that are not pure Pakistanis from our official perspective. So I guess that's why this Indus debate to me is very unique moment, turning point, if it's capitalized, if it's looked into that, because it opens the door to become a territorial nation state. And until we don't become a territorial nation state, we are not going to then respect and include the ethnic minorities. Because we are always telling them कि हम तो मुसलमान भाई हैं सारे, भाई बहने हैं. So the Baloch says, well, yes, I'm a Muslim, but give me my rights. Or the Pakhtun in the tribal district says, I don't have a hospital here. What religious lecture you giving me? Like the Bengali said that yes, we are devout Muslims, but you are taking away our resources. But exactly, jute, right? So you're taking my jute and selling it in the world. So by doing that, we will also when we celebrate the territory and the nations and the sub-nations that exist in Pakistan, then we also create a more inclusive Pakistan.
Okay, so you mentioned Etazaz Hassan's book, the Indus Saga. One of the main themes, and I think he mentions it in the preface or in the first chapter when he's laying out why he's writing the book. He says that whenever he went abroad, he saw that people just thought of Pakistan as the un-Indians. We did not have an introduction.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to introduce ourselves. For example, how do we introduce ourselves to the Egyptians? Why? I'm also a Muslim. What are you?
No.
So he was basically responding to the idea of India by Jawaharlal Nehru.
Yeah.
And he says that Jawaharlal Nehru says that these are the two rivers that come out of Tibet and then into Kashmir, and then they form the India that
The delta.
The delta, Indus Valley Civilization and the Gangetic Civilization. And this guy, Etazaz Hassan, argues that no, this is a different civilization. And this is a different civilization. And now this does become a civilizational question. And that's why I feel that Indians are so incensed by the idea that, because it is everything that, it is against everything that Nehru thought was the idea of India. And they are now saying that, because I have seen their angry responses. They're not just angrily responding to our assertion that we are the inheritors of Indus Valley Civilization. They're also abusing our prophet. They're also abusing our religion. They're also abusing, and those posts, they would be dead here if they were in Pakistan. Those are blasphemous altogether. So the thing is, why do you think that they are so
incensed?
angry?
Well, so they're angry. Obviously, the secular Indian nationalist thinks. And of course, inspired by Nehruvian vision of India's past. That's also an imagination, by the
Yes,
way.
yes.
Idea of India is a beautiful book, and it's one of my favorite books. But it is also an imagined idea of India,
Of course.
right, of the past, overlooking so many differences and so many issues. But anyway, so the secular nationalist says that Indus is also part of India, right? So Sindhu, Hindu, right? All these names were
Yeah, yeah.
they're linked, and partition was an aberration, was an unnatural thing of carving out a separate homeland, which a lot of Pakistani intellectuals also subscribe to this idea. It's not just the Indian nationalists. And then, of course, the ultimate optimal solution would be India to become one day, Akhand Bharat,
Yes.
right? A secular, idyllic place. But as events have shown us that Akhand Bharat or Akhand Pakistan is no such idyllic Jannat, right? Or it is a sectarian, communal, class-ridden, caste-ridden society with thousands of years of inequities, which are now playing out even in modern times. Okay,
Correct.
whether it's the caste system there or in Pakistan, or whether it's class inequality in India or in Pakistan, that affects everyone. So that's the secular nationalist. The Hindutva nationalist says that everything was Hindu, and this was a beautiful idyllic land, but these barbarians, quote unquote Muslims, came in from Turkic areas and started invading and destroying our beautiful, glorious Hindu land. They took away our wealth, they destroyed our temples, they killed people, they did forcible conversions, and now they left a big number of Muslims in India, which all cannot be killed, unfortunately, because it's not possible, physically not possible. And they also cut away our land and created a new country, Pakistan, which is a Muslim majority country. And they said, because there's a Muslim majority country, now we are going to make a Hindu majority country.
Correct.
Right? So there's a mirror image going on. So both these groups are annoyed by the Pakistani idea of Indus Valley Civilization being a Pakistani. Now, what you cannot undo geography, you cannot undo territorial linkage. Maybe in 1947, nobody really thought, because at that time it was just being discovered and still under the process. Now it's become really important. So that's why you see a lot of outrage and a lot of anger, because obviously now the idea of India has to be rethought and reimagined by both the parties, the secular ones and the not so secular ones, because they both have their grievance against Pakistan in a way. For, as I said, the secular says this is an unnatural, because they kept on. In fact, even now they say it's an unnatural country, it's an artificial country. There's a very famous retired judge who tweets all the time and writes article, and he's forever saying, oh, this is an artificial country made by the British. And he's not a bad guy. I mean, he's
the greatest linguist, legalist who has ever been born in the Indian subcontinent, according to Fawad Chaudhry.
According to Fawad, he's empathetic to Pakistanis, but he says that the ideal solution would be Pakistan to merge back into Greater India. Now, you see, so the spectrum is like that. There's a Pakistan hater, or let's say a militant Hindutva guy wants to throw bombs on Pakistan, nuke it. And then on the spectrum, you have a friend of Pakistan. They all want the same thing. They want Pakistan to be undone. So in 71, that's why Indira is such a legend, that despite the fact that she was a terrible ruler, she, destroyed India's democracy, ultimately look what she did to the Sikhs, and then the Sikhs killed her. She's celebrated because she achieved half of that. She broke half of Pakistan successfully, and now there are all these movies in popular culture. Manik Shaw, the general, is celebrated. Indira's
Field Marshal.
Yeah, Field Marshal, and a new film on Indira has also come out, which also whitewashes Indira's emergency and everything, because they achieved half of that breaking. Now, to me, that is really collective myopia and violence. Because when you want to undo countries of with people, and now there are millions of people, there are 250 million people in Pakistan. If you want to deny them water, they'll die. If you want to bomb them, they'll die. I mean, have some respect for even ancient Hindu beliefs, which say don't touch human life, right? Human life is sacred in all religions, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Islam, but they don't care. The Hindutva says we are going to nuke them because they are sending terrorists and they are this and they did that. They go to the past because they have all these grievances. And the secular ones say, well, we need to teach Pakistan a lesson because it is an errant jihadist terrorist state. Let's bomb them. Carpet bomb them. So on both sides of the spectrum, you have this. And I'm not saying Pakistan does not have such nut jobs. We also have those, but we have a far fewer in numbers,
and we
more
classify
highlighted.
them, and we classify them as nut jobs as well.
We classify them as nut jobs, and none of our political leaders in today's Pakistan speaks like that. From Jamiyat, the JUI's Maulana Fazlur Rahman to Nawaz Sharif, and from Nawaz Sharif to Bilawal Bhutto, from Bilawal Bhutto to Imran Khan, they all want peace with India. They all want trade with India.
Yeah.
If you talk to them, if you look at their party manifestos, nobody says, there are extremist nut jobs who say we'll go and we'll reconquer India or whatever. So the mainstream discourse in Pakistan is very different. And that's why we need people to people contact. We need, they have banned Pakistani media now, social media, Pakistani channels, websites. Indians should learn and know more about Pakistan. That's why when they come to Pakistan, they're like, oh, we went there, and they write these lovely, nice posts. They're like, oh, they were so friendly, they were so nice, the rickshaw wala and the taxi wala, and this guy offered.
And nobody had surma in his eye.
Nobody had surma or adab or topi.
Abu Jan.
Abu Jan and Amijan. But more importantly, nobody said, okay, you're an Indian, you're a Hindu, I'm going to kill you. No. This is an extremist, lunatic fringe, which was earlier supported by, let's say, elements of the state. But even now, that has not been happening. Look at the so-called jihadists in Kashmir. Pakistan has even blocked many of them, for many years now. And Indians themselves admit that the numbers of infiltration has been at the lowest in recent years. So I really, you see, all of this is a political project. It's part ignorance. It's part how we ban. We have also banned books from India. We've also banned Indian websites. Some websites don't work here. Indian channels were banned by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Because the Star Plus plays were very popular. so they said they are destroying our family values or whatever.
They should have been banned for the terrible content
for being terrible content. I know, but what I'm trying to say is that let there be in 21st century digital world. Let there be open communication so that we learn about each other. But more so, Indians need to learn about modern Pakistan and the young modern because average Pakistani is 23-year-old median age. The Gen Z rules Pakistan. That's the future of Pakistan. They should know that this is not the generation that they are used to. And we see that happening. That Pakistani youth are. Remember when this whole India-Pakistan war was going on, and all the funny jokes and clips and memes were being created. They were also being created because. Many of them obviously wanted Pakistan to succeed, obviously wanted Pakistan to defend itself, but they were not looking at destruction of India and Indians. On the other hand, the Indian channels and even some respectable journalists were asking for the destruction of Pakistan and destruction of Pakistanis. These are two different things. Right, so it's a very subtle distinction, and that's what really worried me, because that discourse was so toxic and so problematic that I felt that perhaps we have now, reached the point of no return. It's become reversible, this hatred. But I think I'm an optimist. I think it's always reversible.
It's always reversible. And as you once said to me in one of our conversations, that Aag Ka Darya is the greatest novel of the 20th century. And you always refer to it as,
yes,
this is always going to reverse. Something is going to change. Something is going to give.
Yes.
And we hope that something gives. Thank you very much for this discussion, and I hope many people would have learned a lot from this. And I hope if there are any Indians watching this, they'd also see that there are people who don't want to kill you. So let us live. And let's live in peace. Thank you very much for this video, and thanks everyone for watching. This is Ali Warsi from New Wave History signing out. Until next time.